Nothing but a man.
Hello, welcome to another video. Very late recording this. It is Monday. Yes, that's right, Monday. I've had some real difficulties in actually getting some work done this last week. I believe I did a very little amount of work on Wednesday, no work at all on Thursday. I did about 1 hour, 10 o'clock Friday night, none on Saturday, and I got 2 hours done yesterday. That was completing a video, the second video of the year. So that means I've still got last week's video to do, obviously, because this is that video, and the weeks before to do. Just don't seem to be able to get on with anything. It is frustrating, but I am concentrating on these videos to get this channel up to date and to keep on top of that, and then hopefully get on top of the other channels as and when I can. Now, you may be able to hear some noise in the background. I'm not sure if you can or not. I may be able to filter it out, but the weather is very blustery and windy due to the storm that we're currently having. With regards to the family, we're all seem to be going okay. Wife did have one of her friends and their children over Friday and Saturday, so obviously that contributed to me not getting anywhere. It was nice that we actually had visitors though. We don't really get that many people coming around to see us, and don't really know that many people in York at the moment. So it is what it is. But I do need to actually focus my efforts on getting this business up and running properly. Right, so as with the latest schedule, let's talk about NAS. If you're thinking about getting a NAS, the first thing you need to do, of course, is consider whether or not you do actually need one. A lot of people on YouTube do use NAS systems because that's what they need, but some of them, I believe, are using them when they don't actually need them. A number of businesses are actually using file servers. Once again, the question needs to be asked, is this overkill for what they need? Would a simple NAS do the job? It really depends on a number of factors, such as what are you going to use it for, how many people need to access it, etc. For some people just starting on their YouTube journey, if it's just you accessing the files from one system, one computer, one laptop, whatever, then quite frankly, DAS might be the answer for you. That is, directly attached storage. Obviously, if you're using a tower PC, simply adding more hard drives into it and connecting them to the motherboard would be the simplest solution. Yes, I am aware that my PC needs dusting. It is on my to-do list. Obviously, if you're using a laptop, that isn't really an option. There are ways of removing, say, an optical drive and replacing it with a second disk. That's not always feasible, or if you're not that tech-minded, that might not be the option for you. Best option may be to use some form of USB. Most systems do have USB ports, so connecting some sort of USB dock might be the answer. But again, it depends on what your requirements will be. The higher the resolution and frame rate of your video footage, the faster the connection needs to be. Some people are saying that USB 2 is fast enough for their requirements. For compressed files, such as MP4s that we actually upload to YouTube, that is the case. But the thing to remember about USB 2 is that it runs at 0.48 gigabits per second, and an uncompressed 1080p 24 frames per second video runs at 1.2 gigabits per second. So USB 2 is not good enough for uncompressed HD. The first version of USB 3, which is USB 3.0 as far as I'm concerned, runs at 5 gigabits per second, which means you can have uncompressed 1080p 24 4 streams running simultaneously, or one UHD stream. If you're trying to do more than that, obviously it will cause problems and you may get some juddering or stuttering or other such problems. USB 3.1 is twice as fast, so obviously you can then get 8 1080p 24 streams or 2 UHD streams. Obviously the fastest one we can get at the moment for USB, I'm not going into Thunderbolt because a lot of Windows PCs still don't have Thunderbolt capability, but you can on some Macs. Well, I'll do a future video on those. USB 3.2 runs twice as fast again, 20 gigabits per second. So you can actually have 16 1080p 24 streams, or 4 UHD streams, or, if depending on what camera you're using, 1 8K stream. So, first thing to ask is, what is the video resolution you're using? What is the frame rate? Now all these numbers I've just given you are for 24 frames per second. If you're shooting at 30 frames per second, obviously you need an extra 25% on top of that. So USB 3 might not be good enough for a UHD stream. Likewise, if you're shooting at 60 frames per second, you need to reduce even further. So of course, if you are recording at 60 frames per second, a 1080p video stream actually requires 3.0 gigabits per second. Naturally, this means that if you're doing 2 uncompressed streams at 60 frames per second at that resolution, a USB 3.0 won't be able to do it. So again, you may get stuttering, dropped frames, etc. Let's have a look at some DAS options. There's a 2-bay option from Sabrent, like this one, the StarTech, like this one, and Orico, like this one. Now some of these actually have options for 2.5-inch drives as well as 3.5-inch drives, so it really depends what type of drive you're going for, whether they're standard spinning discs or the solid state drives. There is this other option here, an M2 SSD dock. You can put 2 sticks in it from Aoju. Yeah, I have absolutely no idea. I probably just butchered that. I have no idea how to pronounce it properly, so apologies if I've got it wrong. There are also 4-bay SATA dock options, again from StarTech, like this one, Orico, like this one, and Yotamaster, like this one. Yotamaster also do a 5-bay version of it. Now, do you need an actual file server? This is a good question. File servers tend to have much higher spec than the NAS options. They have more powerful hardware, they have greater functionality because they can run several server applications simultaneously. They do tend to have more memory or options for expanding the memory in them. You do sometimes need a server license for the server version of the software you want to run on it, whether that be Windows or other options. And you sometimes need client access licenses to access the server from the machine side that you're actually doing the work on. So these are things to consider before going down the file server option. There are different manufacturers of file servers, such as IBM, like this one, and HP, like this one. As you can see, servers can come in desktop towers, as well as rack mount versions. It really depends on your requirements. Please bear in mind that file servers tend to run quite hot, and therefore the fans run faster, so a desktop version might not be helpful if you're trying to record whilst sitting quite close to it. In which case a rack mount system might be better, but again they tend to run hot and need to go in some form of rack mount with some fans in there. Again, they run quite loud. This means that either option may be better off in a separate room to where you record your videos. NAS tend to have more basic settings and less customization options, but a lot of them are simply plug it in and away you go. Some very basic setup required, such as IP settings, etc. Some of them already just do that automatically using DHCP. All you do is look for it on the network, connect to it, and away you go. There are of course fewer applications that can run on them. Some NAS device vendors require users to choose one of their own apps, not third-party apps. Things to think about when going down the NAS route is storage capacity. What storage capacity do you require? What do you think you're going to require? What do you need right now compared to what you might need in 12 months, 24 months, or 5 years? At that point you may need a file server. Do you need to go down that route with the added expense at this time? You also have an option with the NAS devices of buying them already populated, or basically an empty box with some electronics in it, diskless, in which case you need to then check what disks will work in that NAS. You also need to check the file types that the NAS will work with, because it depends again on what type of files you're going to be using. If you're going to be using it as some form of media server, then you need to check that the file type will work. Some NAS devices come with USB ports, usually one USB 2 and two USB 3s. Obviously the USB 3s are to add even more storage, and the USB 2 is typically, not always, but sometimes used to connect something like a network shared printer. Some NAS devices come with a one button copy option. That means you can copy files onto it from a designated folder by just pressing one button on the NAS device. Again, depending on what you require, how many people are using it, etc., some of them come with more than one Ethernet port. In which case, will two people access it from different ports, or is there an option for twining them? In which case, instead of a 1 gigabit per second, you may get 2 gigabits per second, or close there too. Also need to ask, what do you need network-wise? If you're using high resolutions with higher frame rates, you may need a NAS with 10 gigabit Ethernet. Some pre-built NASs come with an option for an empty PCI slot, in which case you can then add in a card for 10 gigabit Ethernet later. And some of them do come with their own HDMI port, so you can plug it directly to your television if you are actually using it as a media server. And again, will you be using it just from your home office or your office? In which case, some NAS devices come with the option for send web links to people, so you can remote access it. And then of course you just set up permissions to access either certain files or certain folders, depending on your particular requirements. But please be aware, putting the wrong settings in doing that could allow all of your files to be accessed by just about anyone on the internet. So you do need to consider security when doing so. One option is this one from Acer Store. There's this one from Synology. There's this one from QNAP. And there's this one from TerraMaster. Now, I personally have never used a NAS device, but as I said earlier, a number of YouTubers do actually use them. I'm sure they can tell you more about them on their channels. Now, the thing to remember, of course, is the NAS devices come with a different number of drive bays. Personally, I don't see the point in getting a NAS with only 2 drive bays. It limits your options for any sort of form of redundancy. Unless you're just mirroring the drives, you still have a limited amount of space. So as far as I'm concerned, 2-bay NASs are pointless. You may as well just get yourself some form of DAS. Having said that, the 4-bay ones do look reasonable, but are quite expensive. There are options available that have more than 4 drive bays, such as these ones. Another word of caution: NAS devices from vendors who also make hard drives may only recommend using their own hard drives in their systems. This doesn't mean that other manufacturers' drives won't work in them, but if they don't work, that's on you, not the manufacturers. Also, they may only recommend a specific type of their drives that will work in these devices. So do check all the documentation before buying one. Option 3B, of course, for you is to roll your own NAS. The simplest one being, if you have an old PC tower that's not really being used anymore, add in a couple of hard drives, etc., connect them up and just put some folders on there and share them across the network. Though I do recommend you use some proper NAS software to do it. So you may need to either take out the existing drive with, say, probably Windows on it and put something else on a fresh install, or just wipe over the top of Windows. Ideally, make it dual boot, that way you keep both on the same drive. Another option is, if you have an old laptop, again not being used, add in some external hard drives. So sort of hybrid really between options 1 and 3. So you put them in as a DAS and again share them across the network, either using shared folders or some proper NAS software. Another option is to use an SBC, which is the route I'm going to be attempting. SBCs are single board computers. They have a limited amount of functionality to them. Basically it's just a circuit on a chip with some extra bits put in so you can connect some USB devices, etc. The most famous one being the Raspberry Pi. Again, you set it up similar to the laptop option, in which case you just add some external drive docks and share them. But this way, of course, does mean you need to actually install an operating system of some sort on the device in the first place. Usually they do not come with operating systems pre-installed. So again, you may want to go down the option of a specific NAS operating system. Another SBC, and this is one of the ones I'll be using, will be an Odroid board. These are made by a company called Hardkernel, and the Odroids are just a portmanteau of Open Android. That's a little bit misleading because some of it is proprietary software. That's the option I'm going to be trying, so I will let you know in future videos how I get on. One of the Odroid boards does actually come with 2 SATA connectors and a PCIe 4-lane slot, so you can put in a SATA bridge, so you can actually have 6 hard drives connected to it without using any of the USB ports. Plenty of expandability there. Since recording this video, I've found out that the Odroid board with the SATA slots, the H2 Plus, has been discontinued due to parts shortage. But again, the SBCs, both the Raspberry Pi and the Odroids, do have a limited amount of memory, RAM. So it depends on what files you're going to be using, how many people are going to be connecting to it, as to whether or not these are options available to you. So that's what you need to do at the moment if you're considering going down this route. Take a look at your options, have a think about what you think you need now, what you might need in 12 months, what you might need in 5 years. If you go down the DAS option, that will be the cheapest. Second cheapest I think will be roll your own NAS, followed by NAS, followed by file server. I strongly recommend against going down the file server route if it's just you and one other person, etc. As mentioned before, it could be overkill for your requirements. If you go down the pre-built NAS, again it's just a case of doing what you think you need. Now a NAS is still usable if you then need to expand into using a file server, because the NAS itself can be used as a backup device to store a copy of the data from the file server just in case of a failure on the actual file server. This may be a wise choice. So have a think about what you think you need, and then please watch the next video in this series because I will be talking about RAID options. And this episode after that I'll be talking about hard drive choices. So after you watch the next 2 videos, You'll then be in a position to think about what exactly you think you need and then make a wiser choice regarding equipment. That's it for this video. As always, thank you for your time watching.